Hello and welcome to Players Guild. My name is Loki. I'm joined by our lovely guild master Scott, who's on the ship.
Welcome aboard, me hearties of this fine vessel, Players Guild.
Arrgh.
You are part of the guild crew, pirates. Yeah. I'm excited to talk One Piece again. It's been a while. It's been you and Matt. Shout out to Plandana. He has linked to his Twitch in the description below. But yeah, I get to talk about One Piece with you. I've been out of the competitive scene. I know there's this maybe slightly big tournament called the Treasure Cup happening.
Maybe
But
slightly. So there's two of them coming, and one of them we expect to be at full capacity.
which is awesome. I love to see it. Love to see it. But as somebody who's not familiar with the meta and someone who's quite familiar with the meta, we're going to break it down for what you can expect to see there. And of course, if you see Loki there, we've got a few surprises planned for you if you meet him in person. So
So I'm going to
let's get into it.
guess Scott's not going there.
Nope.
Um, we're going to go through the decks. I just want to say that those are template deck lists.
Hmm.
If you find a different text you want to play that work better for you, of course that is possible. Those are by no means that the decks you expect. It's just to give an idea of what the deck does and what
Yeah.
to pay attention to.
Okay. Which
And
let's start with the elephant in the room.
the biggest
Oh, or the
offender.
because even I, someone who is not super in touch with the meta, I know the power of Eustace Captain Kid, but I think the real thing that we just need to dive into here is the A drop, right?
Yes, so this deck is all about building card advantage,
Hmm.
um, and then dropping off the 8 drop, attaching a Dawn, and then resting an 8 drop even if you don't have a free drop to play. The deck is built to use Kozuki and Jewelry Bonnie, which are repeatable searches, and
Hmm.
you keep on using them with some small blockers here and there. There is the guy that with one Dawn, if you have 3 characters, when you block, you get to draw a card, which is amazing to protect your Kozuki and Bonnie. And you just keep on building that card advantage, so we have a good split between Land of Wano cards and Supernovas.
Hmm.
One of the most important Supernovas for us is, of course, the 8 drop Kid. For Land of Wano cards, we are running a lady that can rest your opponent's battle cards, which battle cards? No, characters.
Characters.
Characters, yeah. She can be swapped into Okiko. The problem with Okiko is she doesn't have any counter, whereas Ishizu has 2k counter. So there is that balancing out what you want. For the finishes, we have Yamato with double attack and banish, and then we are also running blocker law just to help protect that 8 drop kid. Because the moment the 8 drop kid is in rest mode, we attach a Dawn, your opponent can't attack anything. It's an 8k and 8 drop, which means that there is no base removal for it. The best
Hmm.
deck that has a chance to remove it is going to be something like purple with their big Kaidos, or red, which can reduce the power by 2k and then use an extra card to remove it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So looking at it, it's a deck that essentially builds a wall, but also has a massive hand as well, right? That's what I'm taking this as.
So essentially, I was playing against this deck multiple times. Depending on the deck I was playing, if I was playing with a slower deck, they drop Kid and they have 13 cards in hand.
Hmm.
If I'm playing using faster deck, yes, their hand is smaller because it's only about 5-6 cards, but then my things are not that big.
Mm.
One of the best counters to the deck is the 5 drop Luffy from starter deck,
Okay.
the one that
Uh,
doesn't let
so
your opponent block.
And just before we move on from this, I do want to touch upon that leader, right? Because it is such a
Yes.
powerful skill for free Dawn, right?
So that's
Yeah, you lose a card from hand, but you get an extra swing.
Yeah, that's your consistence. That's your consistence, and that's also your answer to a mirror match. The reason
Mm.
why you stay with this leader is because it's an answer to a mirror match. Because you have your kid, your opponent has their kid, you attach, I think it's 6 to your leader,
Hmm.
and you have 11k. You attack with that 11k, and of course with the 9k 8 drop you had, and then you pay 3 to restand by discarding a card. So
Mm.
11k is a fairly important number. They do need to use at least a 4k, which is either 2 2ks or one of their counters. Usually the counter that you run is repel, because it costs 2 and then restands 1. and then essentially keep on providing that pressure. If they have blockers, of course, you don't do that, but it gives you that answer, those 2 attacks to try to remove Kid, and takes a lot of cards from their hand because, yes, they get to use the 4K here to stop 1 attack, but then there's another.
Mm.
So you
Yeah.
get in on their hand like that because nothing else can be attacked besides Eustace Kid.
Which makes sense, right?
Yes.
And so yeah, I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory. This is the big deck going into it. I hope people have had enough experience playing with it. Again, this build we're using is more of just a here. This is the idea of what the deck's going to be and what you can face, rather than this specific deck list is what you're going to come up against. But I think it does a really good job of telling you it's going to be trying to rest your stuff. It's going to be resting on that Eustace Kid. Eustace Kid is your problem. The 8-drop is your problem.
And you need to have an
But
out.
you can't sleep on that leader swings either, because that leader can pressure in unlike any other leader in the game right now.
Yes.
So yeah.
The next deck that in UK is fairly popular on locals. Didn't do very well on the tournaments, although it does win here and there. It's Doflamingo.
Don Quixote.
Doflamingo is really weird deck.
Mm-hmm.
When it does,
So I've not had much experience with this deck at all.
I played with it a few times, and that was my only loss when I was playing on locals. It's a very weird deck because so the reason why Kid is so good is because it's consistency.deck. The next 2 decks we're talking about, so Doflamingo and Kaido, are very RNG based. Doflamingo needs to open Perona. There's no other card you can open that's going to make your turn work unless you go second and you open Desert Spada. So the way the leader works, you attach 2 Dawn to him and you attack for 7k, which is a significant swing on its own.
It's a good swing. It's a magic number, right?
Yeah, it is quite a big number, yes. Then you pay 1 and you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's 7 Warlords of the Seas with cost 4 or less, you get to play it in rest mode.
Which I think's pretty good. That's a pretty good ability, right? But again, as you mentioned, it's random.
It's random unless you find Perona. That's why you need to find Perona turn 1, because that lets you reorganize the top 5 cards of your deck.
Yeah, she lets you fix your order, right?
Yes. We have tons of very powerful 7 Warlords. We have a 4-drop Mihawk, which when attacking, if it has Dawn attached, lets you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. And it's also a 2k counter. We have Gecko Moria, which lets you bring back 1 7 Warlords of Seas with cost 4 less beside itself from the drop to your hand.
Which I think that's huge, right? I think that's such a
it's a 5K
powerful
both
effect.
of them are 5k attackers as well.
Yeah, I think Gecko Moria is huge, honestly.
Yes. Then we have my favorite card, Boa Hancock, which is also 7 Warlords of Seas.
She's fantastic.
She's a blocker. If she has Dawn attached on attack or block, if you have 5 or less cards, you get to draw a card. Again, she's the 7 Warlords of the Seas. You can bring her back with Gecko Moria. All of those cards have counter power, which is huge as well. We have Bartholomew, which when KO blocker, that says when KO you get to play Pacifista. The only Pacifista we play is the Vanilla. Because the blockers, the infinite blockers, don't have counter power. And Vanilla does have counter power. It's also 6k. So they remove your blocker, you get to pop this. We have the Surprise Bounce that can be played from the top of the deck. Of course, we have another Doflamingo that looks... Those are the cards that you're going to see in every deck. What can change is your upper end. So your upper end is the 7-drop Doffy, the 9-drop Mihawk, and it could be also 7-drop Crocodile, depending on your build. Crocodile makes your event cards cheaper. One of the most powerful events, Love Beam, Desert Spada is really good. You could run Overheat as well. And one card that you definitely want to be running in this deck is Mihawk, and you want to be running it at 4. That's at least my
4-drop?
The 9-drop.
Oh, okay, interesting.
The reason I'm saying that is because I played with this deck against Kid. And as we said, Kid is going to be the biggest contender. You need to drop Mihawk before they drop their 8-drop Kid, because that 9-drop Mihawk has 9k power. You can swing without using your Dawn. in and threaten their kid. That's what you need to do, because then if you add stuff on top, they do need to block your Mihawk.
Yeah.
That's why there is 4 Mihawks in this particular build. 7 drop Doffy is a powerful card that can bounce 7 drop or less, which means it can put back your opponent by quite a few Dawn, which they're not going to use to attach and attack with it.
That's true. Yeah, I can understand now, like where you're coming from with that Mihawk, especially. Yeah, you're not going to remove it with the effect, but to pressure that kid is important, right? Because
Yes.
even pressuring that kid forces cards from your opponent's hand, which they don't want to be doing.
Yes. And I found myself that I want to play it as soon as I have 9 Dawn without using my Doffy's effect, and even spin something irrelevant. Although, if you're playing against Kid, there's nothing irrelevant on their board, which is funny, because everything there is either draw a card, or do something when attacking, or do something when blocking, or a blocker. So you just get rid of those searches, consistency cards, you get rid of the stuff that's annoying. Usually you're going to get rid of the block and attack with your leader to one of their consistency cards, either Jewelry or Kozuki, which have 1k and 0k respectively. And then you have that Mihawk ready for the moment that Kid comes down.
Okay. So I guess the last thing I've got to address is off of the leader effect, do you still get on play effects? I'm assuming yes.
Yes,
yeah.
because we play the cards. So leader, essentially, you build the deck so you have as many on play as possible. But leader essentially says you have additional card in hand. It costs you 3, but you get that additional card in hand. That's why the 1-drop blocker here is amazing, because that law is also 7 Warlords of the Sea. So you can play it, you can recur it with Gecko Moria. That's one of the most impactful 1-drop blockers in the game.
And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing any promos in this one. This feels like it's an all straight out of set 1.
So this one is starter deck and set 1. So there is a card that you could run, which is the promo law. I have not included it. It's a powerful card, but it would be in that slot of 7 drop and 9 drops. So
which I think, that's where the invest really comes in, right?
The rest is pretty sad. Maybe you cut down on some pacifistas, but I don't think you want to cut down on the counter power.
That's fair. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good overview. Desert Spider, I think, is probably one of my favorite cards in the game.
I was using that card in my blue-purple Kaido because it's so amazing. It lets you choose what you have on the top of your deck for the next 3 turns.
And even if you get it as a trigger, right? I think it's it's not
often.
Draw
2
but...
and discard 1. They're very powerful effects. They're both very powerful effects. I love Desert Spider.
Yeah, I really hope we get all that Desert Spider, like with actually Croc doing the attack. But that's getting away from here and there. So that is Durfee. I think a deck. Honestly, I think it's going to be more in that room than people think.
I think there's going to be quite a lot of them, because if you open Perona, or if you're lucky, this deck is absolutely amazing, and it's a train. I did beat Kid twice with it. Not with this specific version. I think I was only running 2 9-drop Mihawks at that point. But I did beat Kid because I dropped Mihawk before they dropped the Kid.
Which I think makes sense, right? Because then you have that ability to...
I create, next time when they drop Kid, they get it rested. I create enough pressure with Mihawk. I put Mihawk up to 12, and then I put my Doffy up, and then I get to play something as well with it.
Which I think
I do threaten a lot.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Moving on, we have another big contender that a lot of people love, but is NG heavy and is...
Yeah.
So this is a version that I've seen going around. I personally am not a big fan of this version, but it's the same as Doffy. If it does what it's supposed to, it does it powerfully. The problem is this deck doesn't have as much draw engine, so it needs to run a lot of dead cards. So talking about the cards, very quickly, it's a blocker heavy deck. So we have 4 Black Marias and 4 Kurozumis, but also running the Kurozumi that makes your other Kurozumis unkillable in battle.
Yeah.
So you have unkillable blocker.
Which makes sense.
which means you get to survive multiple big attacks, right? Sadly,
Yeah.
it doesn't help much against red decks because they have Luffy.
Yeah.
Who's Who, I was never a big fan of running more than 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So in this situation, I'm only putting 2. I know there are people who worry about playing against aggressive decks that run 4 of them. They're also fairly good against Kid because you get to remove their Searcher. But because they have no counter power, it's very, very awkward to use them. Which is, again, this deck doesn't have much counter power. Jack is what you need to win against Duffy. If you don't have Jack, you don't win against Duffy. That's why, again,
That's an interesting.
this
That's
is in here. Because Duffy just keeps on drawing additional cards. That's the effect. And Jack keeps on getting rid of those cards. I think it's the same in the Kid matchup. So when I was playing against Kid, I actually didn't have Jack.
Ooh.
And I regretted that. Because my version didn't run Jacks, but Jacks are going back into my version.
Yeah.
Ulti and X-Drake are powerful cards that have plus 2k counter. That's literally, this deck needs as many plus 2k counters as possible because it doesn't have that much counter power.
I was going to say to compensate for the lack of it in like the high end with Kings and Kaido.
There are people who run the chapter 1, but this
Chapter 1? Chapter 1?
Page 1. So, the
That's
problem
alright.
is that purple has 3 2k counters, and 2 of them don't do anything. There's ulti, and there is a guy who grabs the smiley fruit. Ulti is better to run because in case you need to play the threat, she's a 4-drop 5k. That's in case you need the threat.
Which I think makes sense,
and
right?
X-Drake is just amazing when you play it, done -1, and your opponent discards a card from hand. That's just...
Yeah.
Queen is the only draw engine that purple has. Purple doesn't have any other draw engine beside Queen. The start of the Queen, you need to run it. Then your Kings for removal. Again, anything from here onwards doesn't have counter power. 6-drop Kings, remove 4 drops, 7-drop. So this is my split of Kings. I'm running 2 6-drops, 1 7-drop, always. Because 7-drop, you realistically need to resolve only once, and it puts you back by 1 turn. And then the reason why the deck is called the Dragon Kaido.
This is a new card to me.
Dragons. So that dragon ramps you at the end of your turn.
Oh, that's really good because Kaido likes to ram.
Yes. So essentially what it means, you can crit every turn. If you have 4 dragons on board and on Nigashima.
That's really strong.
If you have only 2 dragons, it's every other turn you get to crit their life with the leader.
Still pretty powerful though.
Yeah, oh no, that's the reason why, right? But the problem is you need to find Onigashima, you need to find the dragons, and you need to survive that long.
Yeah.
You see where the problem starts, right? Because your only draw engine is Queen.
Yeah.
And on top of that, because you need to keep those dragons on board, 10-drop Kaido is not that great in this deck, that's why there's only 1. But I've also seen people dropping the 10-drop Kaido and just running 9 drops. Because 10-drop just kills everything beside itself, including your stuff, so you kill your own dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the deck depends heavily on seeing Onigashima turn 2. If you don't see Onigashima...
I think that's like the one thing, even when we were playing just starter decks, right? It's like, you've got to open that Onigashima stage card. Are there any more stage cards in the game? I know it's tangent,
There's 1 for each color at the moment.
Okay, so it's
There's
interesting.
more coming in the next set.
Yeah, which I've not really looked at too much. I can't wait till we break that down. So if you want to see that, subscribe and hit that like button. I think that you did a really good job of explaining how Purple Kaido works as a whole and where its threat factor comes into it. I think, given the right matchup, given the right pace, this is a contender to take the tournament. That's my opinion. That is my opinion.
It needs very specific matchups, and the problem is that I've seen a lot of people not using Jacks, and that's one thing that in this video I'm going to do as an advice to you guys. If you run Purple, include those discard Jacks rather than the ramp Jacks. I know ramp Jacks can help, but you're losing the Jack you played and discarded a card to ramp. but then you need to have something to do with it. I played against that version that had all the ramp cards, and that version, even though it topped a big tournament, in general it doesn't work if you play against someone who knows what the deck is supposed to do. If you pressure them, Duffy is just going to go all over you. That's how I lost. You need to hand control Duffy. And you need to hand control Kid as well. If you swing with a jack to their 0k searcher, they have a hard time protecting it. Because they lose a card from hand, and they need to protect the searcher, or they lose the searcher. And even then, afterwards, you just attack, because it doesn't need any Dawn attached, you just attack to their leader and keep on discarding cards from hand until you're ready to take the game.
Interesting.
That's why I love this Jack. That Jack is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a bit of a switch, right? If people are expecting the other Jack, and then you're hitting them with that, I think that does throw off lines of play quite a bit, which, to be fair, we know quite a fair few people in this game. I imagine they're going to be aware of it, but still... I think it's it's one of those things.
It's very difficult to remove Jack with all the heavy blocker lineup.
Yeah, exactly right. You can't defend that Jack, and I think that makes sense. Next up.
Yes, now we're going to go into red, because essentially, okay, let's move to Zoro. Zoro is the most popular red leader at the moment,
without a doubt. Yes. It's everyone talking about Rush Zoro this, Rush Zoro that. We've had our own videos on Rush Zoro.
Rush Zoro is not winning anything. I don't think Rush Zoro is winning anything.
You don't think?
I haven't been paying attention to that many tournaments, but I know Law is winning some, and I know Kid is winning some.
But by far, like, the most popular is Zoro, though.
Because Rush Zoro is simple, right? But it has the same problem as majority of the time the mono red decks, the famous Magic mono red decks. It runs out of steam.
Which I can see.
If you can slow it down enough, you're fine. It is running some interesting cards, but as you can see, majority of the deck caps at 3. And then you have 4 Luffys for finisher and 4 Shanks for finisher. Shanks is more than just finisher. Shanks is your counter to Kid. Because Kid is going to be a big contender, you run 4 Shanks. Because Shanks has base 10k power.
And Rush.
Which means it can attack that Kid and it keep on attacking stuff. It's again how Kid and Doffy are both losing to Zoro is when they run Shanks. So you need to run Shanks. Even though it's a bit counterintuitive for Zoro deck who wants to run as cheap as possible. Because it wants to go wide and just attach Dawn here and there. You're going to lose to Kid. And the one card you need to not lose to Kid is Shanks.
Which makes sense, right? It's a 10k rushing at your face.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared to deal with that, you have to commit to it, right? I think it even forces to just off the bat without any Dawn, right?
Yes. So you need to put at least 2 cards or 1 event. But on top of that, it can't be blocked. So
by 2k or less.
By 2k or less, yes, but the majority of the blockers in Kid are 2k or less. The person I was testing with included the tech that you've probably seen on the version of Kid I showed. There is a free drop 4k blocker that they can free
just to get over that Shanks, right? To stop that Shanks.
Just to help stop that Shanks.
And I think that's where, because we know there's no sideboard, right? And I think that's where this really comes in to its own here, is you have to essentially sideboard for what will be the room. And you can't just disrespect Kid like that. It's a known quantity. It's going to be there. Yeah. But also, you have to take the popularity of Rono Azora. It's the most popular red deck. So you've got to take into the factor, Shanks is probably going to be my out. Their out. And yeah, I think both decks compensate for that. So running the 4 Shanks in a red deck and running that blocker that will stop it makes sense from a perspective of there's no sideboard, right?
Yes, because then, of course, they can attach Dawn to the Kid and try to remove that Shanks, and then you go into back and forth. The other option for the removal is Jet Pistol. A 4-drop that
this card's a monster card. It's from the start of deck.
6k or less, but you are running the 1-drop that can reduce by 2k. And I think in one of the other decks, I think in Luffy as well, I'm showing off a 4-drop that when it attacks can reduce up to 2 characters by 2k. So you can Jet Pistol then to remove that kid. So that's how people started going around the kid. That's why
and I think
every red deck has a chance against Kid because it has jet pistols and shanks.
and I think Jet Pistol is just also in utility. It's just very good. Like I think Jet Pistol is probably one of my favorite cards in the game, just because of how 6,000 coming from games where 10,000 is the normal. Like it seems weird, but then 6,000 in this game hits a fair amount of things.
Oh yeah. Also, the deck has, if I remember correctly, 4 different 2K combos, 2K counters.
And it also has.
Yeah, the one-drop blocker is everywhere. Nami is absolutely amazing, especially in the Zoro deck. And you have the starter deck Luffy that cannot be blocked.
So the one thing I noticed isn't here, and maybe it's because it's not for this deck, is there's no Sunikun. And I know that's got talked about quite a bit. The promo.
I have not put it in here. I know some people run it, and it is actually for Zoro. Because it's a Straw Hat.
Right, so it can get the buff, so it can become a 5k, right? Because I think it's a 1-drop 3k?
It's a 1-drop 3k, but it can be searched with Nami. And you can attach to your leader with the other Nami. And then it becomes 4k, you just need to attach one, it's 5k hitting.
There you go. So yeah, that's not bad.
It can be included in this deck as well. I know not everyone is running Usops, but I think Usops are a bit better than Sanji. They're also 2k counter. And Usopp essentially says once per turn when it has Dawn attached, when your opponent activates event, you get to draw a card.
Which, depending on the right matchup, right? I think going against Purple, this is actually quite a smart
going against
idea.
anyone, if you're trying to remove their big things with a big swing, suddenly that one Usopp makes them stop. I mean, especially against Purple, right? Purple has the strongest counter in the game. 1-drop 4k.
Yeah. I think it's a smart play. Especially because again, right? No sideboard. You have to play for the room. You have to expect maybe there are some unpredictable matchups. So having this, maybe not necessarily at 4. I know 4's there for consistency, but
it's also I think
also that, right? And that they are hugely important in this game right now. And I think they'll always will be. It's just like the super combos in Dragon Ball, essentially, right? So I think it's a, like I say, if you're going to an event that's going to be max capacity, it's going to be a fair few rounds of Swiss. And so this deck is the easy choice to take, play, do the same thing, repeat, rinse, and have a good chance of coming out as a victor on the other end, right? That, to me, seems like a logical thing. And it's also a really newer player deck, friendly deck. But the lines of play aren't complex.
Yes, but there's also a problem with the fact that it's a very linear deck, so it's very easy to stop. I'm saying very easy. Depends on your draws, right?
Well, naturally, but that's the case for.
But yeah, you get to stop it, so you might do well enough to get to a certain point in the tournament, but I don't think any Zoros or any red decks for that matter are going to top. It's just you have good chance when you put Shanks and Jet Pistol to counter Doffy, Kaido, and Kid. But you still need to see them, and you still need to be doing other things in the meantime.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis of Zoro. So whilst I think it will take up a percentage of the decks in the room, you don't think they're going to make it into top cut, which is it's now top 16 as opposed to top 8 originally, which is nice. And yeah, I think something in me just says I think it's going to surprise, but also I definitely understand the reasonings we've given for thinking that it can just get blocked out of top cut.
Yeah.
I don't know. The right player on the right deck with the right cards can make a lot of magic happen.
Moving on, we still stay kinda on red.
Now this is Trafalgar Law!
Yes, we have red.
I love this leader.
So there is 2 different versions of this deck. The more popular one is the Supernovas version, but there is a version with Land of Wano as well.
Okay.
So essentially you run, as you see, you run the good red cards. We have Jet Pistol, we have the lady that makes the stuff smaller, you have Nami that searches Straw Hat Pirates, You have Usopp, Gordon, which are 2k counters. You have Zoro, and you have Luffy.
Mhm.
And of course you have Nico, because Nico is just good removal.
Yeah.
And for green, in this case, we have supernovas with the blockers, killer, so control variant. We have Trafalgar Law and X-Drake. So the reason why we have a fairly even split here, so we went with supernovas because of Jewelry Bonnie, but it's kind of Kid is taking like both of the green engines searching together. Law is taking one of them. Either you use Land of One or you use the Jewelry Bonnie. There's two different variants of this deck. We decided to go more towards the Trafalgar Law
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
variant.
Yeah.
The law, the way the leader works is once per turn. If you have 5 characters, you can pay 2, bounce one of your characters to hand, and then play a character from your hand with a different color than the one you bounced, and cost 5 or less.
Which is basically every endgame piece, right? You've got the Law, you got the Luffy, you got the Zoro.
The thing is that you drop Zoro, attack with Zoro, bounce Zoro, play Law, bounce something else, play Zoro, attack with Zoro.
Which makes sense, right? It's a nasty combo.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's basically him doing the room shambles
Yeah,
thing.
you
But
can bounce X-Drake and Killer to hand, which are your removal pieces, and play Luffy on the other hand.
and this is something I did want to talk about, right? Is because like being able to bounce those on play removals, huge,
Yes.
huge.
And the fact that you can play a 5-drop or less.
Yeah, so it will literally hit. It literally hits everything in the deck, right?
Yes, the deck is built in such a way that it hits everything. Of course, if you want to increase your chances against Kid, this deck is fairly slow, and you can adjust it to run more of the 1-drop blockers to help against that big Kid. And then you have your answer is Luffy. The reason why this deck is not that bothered about running Shanks is just 3 Luffy pistols is because you can drop Luffy for 2 Don, and then you can just attach 8 Don to Luffy. And Luffy can't be blocked. So you suddenly swing for 14.
Where does the 14?
6 plus 8. Luffy is 6k, you attach 8 Don to him.
Right. Yeah,
If he
and
has
you
at
paid
least 2
to bring him
attacks,
out.
it can't be blocked.
Yeah.
But you swing for
Yeah.
14 to remove that Kid. And suddenly you have that pressure that can't be blocked.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I'm guessing the reason for 3 is probably just because you don't want that lack of counter, right?
There is that, and there's also the fact you can bounce that Luffy back to your hand, and then replay it.
Fair enough. Which makes sense, right? Same reason.
I've seen versions that rather than Usopp's run more of the 1-drop blockers, and runs the 1-drop Nami that lets you attach rested Don.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I can see that. I can see that.
That way you can actually resolve 2 Luffys in a turn.
Which I think makes sense.
You attach 2, you attack with Luffy, can be blocked 8k, and then you bounce it to hand, play your Trafalgar Law or any other green stuff, and then hardcast Luffy and attach another 2.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're going to talk about decks that I think really have a chance, I honestly do think Law has a chance.
Yes, Law is the best because it's so versatile, and that's the power of the multicolored one. But the problem is, it has only 4 life.
You're already starting at a disadvantage.
Yes, you're starting at a disadvantage. It's already fairly difficult. So you need to be very careful as you play.
Yeah, like if you hit aggro matchups all day, it's not gonna be a fun time.
No, but that's why this specific version I made is 4 killers and 4 X-Drakes.
True, because then you can deal with those low end things. And I understand that. But I'm just generally speaking, like if you've not built it in this way, that's going to be your downfall.
And that's the thing with Law; it's very versatile, and that's the thing with all of the multicolor leaders. They're way more versatile than their single color counterparts.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? And I just love Law. One of my favorite characters. I love the room. I love the shambles. Yeah, he's cool. I think it's the OP no Mi he has. That's not the point. It's just Law's cool. Law's just really cool. Guys, someone win with Law and make me happy. Although someone winning with Kid would make me happy as well.
I think.
Although I'm always never a fan of the best deck in the room winning.
I
So
think it's either Law or Kid that's going to. We're definitely going to see both of them in the top cut, and I think we
yeah,
might see more kids than anything else in the top cut.
okay.
But I
I
also
think that's
think
fair, right? Because I think majority is going to rule there. Like, I
uh,
think there's just objectively going to be more kids in the room.
I also think that we're going to have a good spread. I think we're going to see some Doffys, couple of
I
Kaidos.
hope so. There's a few people I know who are going to play Durfee,
Yeah,
so that's promising. Um,
they need to
but we
find
have
a
one
way
more
to
deck.
counter Jack.
True. We do have one more deck to talk about before we wrap
Yes.
up here, and that is Straw Hat Luffy himself, Monkey D. Luffy, the starter deck one.
It,
So this guy is deactivate main once per turn. Give this leader one of your characters one rested Don.
yes, either the leader or one of your characters. Then you have Nami that duplicates this effect.
Mm.
And the idea behind that is you play on turn one or two Namis. On depending if you go first or second. On turn two, you play Rushing Zoro, and you attach tons of Dons to him. And then on turn three, if you went first, you play 5-drop Luffy, and immediately attach 2 Don to him because you have Nami and you have Luffy,
Yeah,
your leader. And this is a very scary deck because it creates a lot of pressure early. It has those finisher Shanks. Those Zoros are really annoying. And here we can see the skeleton guy, which I don't know his name.
Brock.
Sure. He's the other card that can reduce power of cards when he has Dawn attached. But because in this deck it's very easy to attach Dawn,
Mm.
we just run him in here. But I've seen people run it in Zoro as well. He's a 4-drop though, so it's a bit, hit and miss. We of course have the 1-drop lady, Otome, I think.
Yeah, Otama. I don't know how you would say her name.
Yeah. Uh, Mostly because she's also a 2K counter, and of course jet pistols.
Dreaded Pistol.
Yeah. This, as you can see, it looks pretty much the same as Zoro deck.
Yeah, like you can see the lines of play, right? You see
Yes.
what makes red good.
Yes. Red. What makes red good? They have 4 different cards with 2K counter.
Yeah. So
for starters.
it does have that defense. It has that offense, and again, with those rush Zoros, with those rush Luffys, they
And
can
the Shanks.
and the Shanks, they can really have a really powerful burst turn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do like the idea of like, hey, cool. I've paid 9 to get my Shanks out. One of those Dons can go underneath it, like,
I mean, you can
or
put.
something
Usually,
else.
you're going to be putting 2 on something.
Well,
You're
yeah,
always
because of
going to
the
try to
Nami.
keep
Yeah.
one Nami around.
Yeah, which I think makes sense. Meanwhile, you just swing in, and I think again, it's another deck that I can see doing well, right? I mean, if you've got the jet pistols, you have the starter deck, and that gives you quite a decent start on all of this stuff.
Yeah,
If I remember,
it
if I remember
has-
correctly, it brings because the Luffy's are the starter deck ones, right?
Yeah, Luffy is the starter deck ones. Yeah.
Then you've got jet pistol, which already comes with it. Diablo Jamler is
Set.
starter deck as well.
I think it's set.
Diablo Jamler, is it?
Oh no, it's not. You're right.
Yeah, I don't remember pulling it. Yeah, so yeah, if you pick up 2 Luffy decks,
If you pick up 2 Luffy decks,
the Zoros are probably your biggest problem there, right?
Yes,
I think
you need to pick up Zoros. You don't realistically need Shanks. Shanks is only something you need to counter Kid, but realistically, you can replace it with 2 more jet pistols.
yeah, I was gonna say right. If Shanks is out of budget, which I mean, Zoro and Shanks are like they're expensive for what they are. Yeah. So yeah, if you fringe cases you want to build this deck, you've got this as a basis. You've got to get the Zoros. I think they're mandatory, but yeah, the Shankses you can replace with 2 more jet pistols. And I think
Zoros are mandatory because it's a 3-drop 5k rush. You can't replace that. They have no counter power, but
it's just too good to pass up.
powerful.
It's just too good to pass up. It is just a very strong card. There's a reason it's N, the price it's at now. Yeah. So overall, quite a nice setting, right? I mean, we've seen green, we've seen red, we've seen blue.
We've seen purple.
That's yeah, purple, right? So I think like all of the colors are quite nicely represented here. I don't think it's going to be an even split across the board, sadly.
No. And sadly, the blue and purple only have 1 viable deck each.
That is true.
Because
Yeah.
Blue,
I mean,
blue Croc is not great.
I was gonna say we could see Croc, but I don't know if it'll do well.
The multicolored croc we've seen is it was a gimmick. It was a one-time wonder, one-hit wonder.
Okay, that's fair.
The problem is if you know what you're doing against that deck, again, it doesn't do that much.
Mm.
It's probably the same with the blue-purple Kaido. I think that was also one-hit wonder, but I'm still going to try to run it.
I do like Blurple Kaido though. I think it's an interesting deck.
From mono-purple decks, King and Kaido play essentially the same, but Kaido now has a payoff for that 8-drop. It has that 8-drop which lets you crit the life constantly, so you don't need to worry about attacking until you go for game. And you go for game for 20k.
Which,
yeah,
good luck.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's our thoughts on what the Treasure Cup will be like. Let us know in the comments below if you think differently, if there's different builds that you would run. By all means, do share. It's all about sharing that knowledge with the community, with your fellow pirates. And yeah, like I said, I'm not going to be there, unfortunately, but Loki will be there. And if you find him, he might have some treasure for you. We'll keep that under wraps for now, but it's an exciting time, especially if you play against him. Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be a long day.
It's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long weekend, but hopefully you all have fun. And yeah, I think any final thoughts on the meta or anything on One Piece?
I need to start watching it eventually.
You really do. It's such a good show. I mean, to be fair, I'd say read it.
Episodes.
I'd say read it. I personally prefer reading it now at this point, but yeah,
I might do
to
that.
be fair,
I might do that.
Like I'd say read it, but then the Wano arc has been animated to perfection. It's so good. Like the scenes they're doing, I'm just like, why couldn't Dragon Ball get this? Like, yeah. So guys, hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this. Hit that like button if you liked it. It helps with the algorithm and helps more people see this, and more people join the Players Guild crew. And of course, comments are always welcome, whether it's feedback, whether it's disagreement. We encourage that discourse. And we'll see you next time.